I know you want to get started. I learned about these cards recently. They're called the Great Controversy.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And on the back, it is Bible, what is it? 12, 7, and 9. And when you scan this QR code, it takes you to a website where you can listen to the Great Controversy, all 42 chapters via audio format.
How is
And it also links you up to, pardon me?
how are the audio? Most of the audios on Ellen White's books, I'm not that crazy about.
We're losing you.
You're
No,
kind of coming in.
I'm not real crazy about
kind
the audios on Ellen White's books. I've listened to a lot of different ones.
No, I understand, but this is a sharing card. This is for you to pass out for like maybe even young people who don't want to pick up the book. But
Okay.
it also links it to videos that Ministry Lineage Journey has
Okay,
done five.
I know
Yeah,
that.
they've done 5-minute videos, and they have a video that corresponds to each chapter of the Great Controversy. You can
So,
also, and there's also the Armageddon video that Amazing Facts did is also on this card.
okay.
And you could purchase 100 of these sharing cards for $27.
Amazing facts.
Say that again.
You get some amazing facts.
Through
Right.
Amazing Facts, the Armageddon video is on here. So I've already given out 100 of them, and I'm working on my second 100. And people seem to love these. It's a British woman, a woman with a British accent, and I don't know if it's AI or an actual person, but it's a good job.
You might actually like that with the British accent.
Yeah. But I thought, I would let you guys know that I think these are a good ministry tool to just give out when you're in the market or,
Okay.
So I wanted to share this with you. I could put the link in the chat box if you guys want,
Okay.
if you're
Glad to do
interested.
that. Yeah. All right.
That's what I wanted to share.
All right. Appreciate it. So let's start with prayer, and I got us recording, and we'll see what we can do here tonight. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much. We can come together again. Bless us tonight as we look into chapter 5 of Daniel, handwriting on the wall. Bless our conversation. May your angels be among us. Show us what you would have us know. Let us see that you are indeed the God who is in control. Bless us now at this time is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let me get my sharing going here. Share. And there we go. And slideshow. There we go. Slideshow. From the beginning. There we go. It's coming up. How's that, folks? It's supposed to come up on that one. That's what it's supposed to come up on. All right. Is that up there? Okay, you got it up there. Everybody can see it in the classroom. There we go. All right. We got these 2 chapters to finish up for the narration, for the narrative section, and then we're going to go to the prophecy. I'm almost got that ready to go to send out to you guys. I'm up through chapter 10, and so I'm working on 11 now, which is a real big one, and then chapter 12, and we'll get those out to you. So in a couple of weeks we'll be getting into that. The first week of the prophecies will be an introduction to the section, and then we'll go into chapter 7. All right?
Okay, sounds good.
So, here we are, chapter 5. Welcome. We have another newbie show up, another classmate. Here is the structure. You see in the lessons I sent you, the structure of the story of chapter 5 is in 5 parts. The 5 parts actually follow a chiasm. Remember what a chiasm is?
Yes.
Okay. So you see the king's feast, number 1, is in relationship to the king's death, number 5. The handwriting on the wall itself and the queen mother's speech about it fits in with Daniel's speech and the meaning of the writing. But in the middle is a high point where Belshazzar meets Belshazzar. Remember, Belteshazzar is a corruption of the name. That's not what Daniel was named. That's a corrupted version of it. He was actually named Belshazzar, same name as the king. But we notice in chapter 5, when the queen mother comes in, she talks about a man named Daniel, who Nebuchadnezzar, your father, named Belteshazzar or Belshazzar. Yes, question? No, he's the new age. You know, I remember my son, we're watching some old movies, and I'm talking about some old major stars, and no, those are oldies. He's not interested in those. And this was Nebuchadnezzar, the first major king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar was the king before him, his dad. And Belteshazzar is the son of the last king of Babylon, and Belshazzar is a co-regent with him. So we're 70 years apart from the beginning down to the end. And so that's the old story. He may have heard the name, but he could care less. He's not impressed, you know. And so Belshazzar finally meets Belshazzar. He finally meets the man. And this is an important meeting here, not just the fact that Daniel tells him what it means, but who it is that's talking to him. The past is catching up, that we'll see. And we'll see how that past catches up. We're going to spend more time with the text, I hope, so that we can kind of really get the story and what's going on here. So the kings here, this is where we see this. Now, I took this out of a set of lessons that was done in '98 by my pastor, Gary Venden, when he did the book of Daniel. He called it Old Book for a New Day. And in this, he has the list of the kings, and not just the list like I showed you in the first lessons. I had the list of the kings of Babylon. Here, he shows you their relationship. We see up on the top row under Nebuchadnezzar, these are his sons or son-in-laws. You know, guys are married to his daughters. And then we see their offspring. Nabonidus with Belshazzar. We see Nergal-Sharezer with Marduk. So we see how they're all related, and they're numbered. We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we know who reigned in what order. And Belshazzar was the co-regent with his father. He was the king there in Babylon when Dad was out of town. So, and this chart is in your lesson. You see it there. And I thought I wanted to give my pastor credit for it because he did a nice job on putting this together. This is just how he had it in his handouts. I reworked this from scratch. I had to build this myself, but I built what he did. So this is just about how it looks in his handout. So Old Book for a New Day.
That's very helpful.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I said that's very helpful to visualize it like that.
Sure, yes. And that's why I thought I'd put it in there so at least you have a copy of that. And if I would have thought about it, maybe I would have put it in the first lesson. So you had all that. So we're down here with Belshazzar. That's where we're at. And so we begin with the lesson, with the text itself. And you see in the lesson, I kind of follow the subheadings, the king's feast, and then the writing on the wall and the queen's speech and everything. Kind of divided up in that section. So you can follow along with that. But the text is about Belshazzar. Belshazzar, the king, held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and he was drinking wine from the presence of the thousands. When Belshazzar tasted the wine, he gave orders to bring the gold and silver vessels which Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. And then they brought the gold vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God, which was in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Just idol God, non-gods, what they praised. So we see here a different mindset to what we had just experienced with Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar played very important in the first 4 chapters. And we saw his growth. We saw how he rebelled with the statue of gold, make it all about him. But we saw finally in chapter 4 where God brought him around to really see where he was wrong. And he not just acknowledged the God of heaven, Daniel's God, but acknowledged that he had dominion and that his dominion was to reign forever and ever. And so he finally relinquished his idea of his kingdom that he had built. This was his masterpiece. Think of it as like when Hitler was in power, the Third Reich was supposed to reign 1,000 years. This is the kind of mindset he had about his kingdom would be a mighty kingdom and reign for a long time. And in essence, be a forever kingdom. So we see a complete opposite now in Belshazzar. The youngins just don't learn from the fathers. Now Nebuchadnezzar wasn't his father biologically. It's more like we see here was a grandfather. Really
Right.
related to him as Belshazzar is his grandson. But we always refer to them as the fathers. And in fact, we do it today, as I mentioned earlier here in the class. America, we talk about America and the founding fathers. They're the fathers of our country. They're that we look back to. And so we call them fathers too, even though they're not our fathers. And for the most part, aren't even related to us, unless for a few people who can trace their bloodline. So,
Doesn't our fathers mean like for us, like when they come like Indiana,
right,
they're talking about our fathers.
right, exactly. It's the same kind of thing. So now,
Karl, I'm
hello?
just noticing that Nebuchadnezzar died in 562 and Belshazzar was born in 553. So he was only 9 years old when Nebuchadnezzar died. He
And
probably
so,
didn't know him real well.
yeah, you'd only heard stories and everything, but and even if he saw him, he probably wasn't that impressed with him. So, yeah. And so now he's got to learn the lesson. Remember these are tests. Chapter 4 and 5 are tests of the kings, whereas chapters 3 and 6 are tests of the Hebrew people. The 3 faithful in chapter 3, Daniel in chapter 6. That fits the chiasm pattern of the book. So in 5, picking up in verse 5, which is really in our second section about the writing on the wall, we see then the king is in there drinking from these vessels that he's taken from his temple that were taken from the Jerusalem temple, and he's mocking God, drinking out of them like they're common things. Kind of like the mindset that Nebuchadnezzar had when he conquered Jerusalem, Judah. He saw it as he conquered their God, and by doing so, he takes their God back, their idol, back to his temple. But since Judah didn't have an idol, he took back the pieces of stuff out of the temple, put that in his temple.
Hmm.
Yeah, they were probably surprised. And so now Belshazzar is simply saying how my God is more powerful than these. So with this arrogance and this partying going on, verse 5 picks up, suddenly the fingers of a man's hand emerge and begin writing opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. I saw some archaeology of Babylon, and they showed right where the king's palace was. We basically seen on the ground the template of where the room was that they were in when the handwriting on the wall took place.
Hmm.
So we know where it's at.
Interesting.
And so the king saw the handwriting, saw the back of the hand that did the writing, and then the king's face grew pale, and his thoughts alarmed him, and his hip joints went slack, and his knees began knocking together. The king called aloud to bring in the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the diviners. The king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon, any man who can read this inscription and explain its interpretation to me shall be clothed with purple and have a necklace of gold around his neck and have authority as third ruler of the kingdom. And all the king's wise men came in. Daniel's a little older. We don't see him part of this group. But they could not read the inscription or make known its interpretation to the king. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed. His face grew even paler, and his nobles were perplexed. So now he's at an impasse. He doesn't know what's going on, but he gets salvation from the queen. The queen entered the banquet. Now the queen, wasn't his wife. This was an older queen who knew Nebuchadnezzar and who knew Daniel. The queen entered the banquet hall because of the words of the king and his nobles. So she heard all the commotion about going on and the wise men coming and all that. So she steps in and into the hall because of the words of the king and his nobles. The queen spoke and said, O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts alarm you or your face be pale. She says, there's a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of your father, illumination, insight, and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were formed in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the king, appointed him chief of the magicians and conjurers, Chaldeans, and diviners. So this is a very important man. He was chief of his counselors for Nebuchadnezzar. So this was because of and why he was chief, verse 12, this was because of an extraordinary spirit, knowledge and insight, interpretation of dreams, explanations of enigmas, and solving of difficult problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Let Daniel now be summoned, and he will declare the interpretation. Well, we see it in the later parts, he's referred to as Daniel far more, and less of using his Babylonian name. People are recognizing him for who he is, and they're calling him by his right name. Like, for instance, when Joseph was wrestling with the angel and he got his name changed that night. Remember what his name was changed to? Israel. But he was still called, not Joseph, Jacob. He was still Jacob. Even though he was called Israel, he was still Jacob. So that didn't change. Daniel was still Daniel, even though he got a Babylonian name. He was still Daniel, too. Right. Exactly. My wife doesn't like the idea of getting new names in heaven. She's Diana. That's the name she likes. And she doesn't understand there's a story behind why we're getting new names. Yeah, who knows? So anyways, they summoned him in. The king now has a little impasse that he can at least have some hope now. He's not completely out of his, at his wit's end. And so the text picks up again, there in verse 13. And that's actually taken a little section where Daniel now meets the king, or Belshazzar meets Belshazzar. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, are you that Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, whom my father, the king, brought from Judah? He said, now I have heard about you, that a spirit of the gods is in you, and that illumination, insight, and extraordinary wisdom have been found in you. Just now the wise men and the conjurers were brought in before me, that they might read the inscription and make its interpretation known to me, but they could not declare the interpretation of the message. But I personally have heard about you that you are able to give interpretation and solve difficult problems. So now, if you are able to read the inscription and make its interpretation known to me, you will be clothed with purple and wear a necklace of gold around your neck, and you will have authority as the third ruler in the kingdom. We know how Daniel feels about that, don't we?
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, give me that necklace of gold.
No, keep it. I don't need it.
Yeah, you, Daniel says, yet you have not. Let me get into the actual text before we get to that. O King, okay. O King, the Most High, God granted sovereignty, grandeur, glory, and majesty to Nebuchadnezzar your father, because the grandeur which he bestowed on him, all the peoples, nations, and men of every language feared and trembled before him. Whomever he wished he killed, and whomever he wished he spared alive, and whomever he wished he elevated, and whomever he wished he humbled. When his heart was lifted up, and his spirit became so proud that he behaved arrogantly, he's referring back to chapter 4 now, he was deposed from the royal throne, and his glory was taken away from him. He was also driven away from mankind, and his heart was made like that of beasts, and his dwelling place was with the wild donkeys. He was given grass to eat like cattle, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until he recognized that the Most High God is ruler over the realm of mankind, and that he sets over it whomever he wishes. So this is a lesson Belshazzar hasn't learned. And that's why I want to put here, this is the emphasis. Daniel says, yet you, after everything he just explained, yet you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. So he evidently had heard enough of the stories and what was going on. He's not ignorant of this. It says, but you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before you and your nobles. Your wives and your concubines have been drinking wine from them, and you have praised the gods of silver and gold and bronze and iron, wood and stone, which do not see, nor hear or understand. But the God in whose hands are your life breath and all your ways, you have not glorified. Then the hand was sent from him, and this inscription was written out. So he's telling them not just what it says and what it means, he's setting the basis on why the hand appeared, why it wrote these words, because of what his arrogance. So he set the stage to really give him the interpretation. And that's in the Mene Mene Tekel Upharsin that the hand writes. Now is the inscription that was written out. Mene Mene Tekel Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the message. Meaning, God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found deficient. King James says found wanting. You're coming up short. And Perez, which is the singular of the plural, Upharsin, your kingdom has been divided. That's a word for divided, for division. Your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians. So, the basic message is
question.
Go ahead.
I've always wondered when it says Mene Mene Tekel Upharsin, and then with the descriptions in verse 28, it says Perez.
Yeah, that's the singular version of Upharsin.
It's a what?
It's the singular, not the plural.
Oh,
That's all.
what does it mean?
It means divide. In this case, his kingdom was divided. And in the plural that he has in the initial handwriting, is that it's dividing into pieces. You know? And we're not just talking the city of Babylon. We're talking the kingdom of Babylon, which reached all the way down the Levant in towards the doors of Egypt, across the Asia Minor, to the Aegean Sea, just before you get into Greece and all that. So that's the empire. That was all divided. Yeah. Yeah, it's a same thing. According to some translations, as they translate, may show you various versions of that. Yeah, that's what I said. There's the singular, Euphrates the plural. Same thing. One's singular, one's plural. That's all. So, all right. You guys got that online? Everything cool? We be cool?
I got it.
Okay. So right after that, Daniel, like I said in the lesson, he extols the name of Nebuchadnezzar, retracing the power and history, including the period of time when God humbled him for 7 years. And he wanted the young arrogant king to know that his father knew the God of heaven, and as powerful as he was, he learned to trust in him. And so now, Belshazzar, it's your turn to follow in those noble footsteps. So, and that's what I went through is this the God who you are sent the hand to write this message. And the message was mene, mene, tekel, Upharsin. So that's the 29, verse 29. It says, then Belshazzar gave orders.
God really didn't give, yep. God didn't give Belshazzar much time to repent.
Oh,
It
no.
seemed like he just said, you're done.
Well, it's like when Jonah went to Nineveh. And of course, nothing in there said the condition of the warning. God is going to destroy the city in 40 days. Now, we don't read that in Jonah where Jonah says, unless you repent. But we know that that's kind of there. There's a repenting that's coming. If it comes, then, that won't happen. That's what Jonah didn't like, anyways. He knew God would forgive him. And
Right.
he gets there and they're in sackcloth and repenting with sackcloth and ashes. And I think the reason why Jonah had success is because he got swallowed by a fish. And the Assyrians, their god was the god Dagon, which was the fish god. And so when they heard about a prophet of Jehovah getting spit up on the shores, coming to speak to them and spit up by a fish, well, they're prepared to listen because this is associated. God meets people where they're at, and he met them right where they were. And so by the time Jonah got there, they were already repenting. And of course, he wasn't happy, but there's a condition there. So if he would have seen this, he could make a comparison. I mean, he could have repented right there, but he doesn't. Belshazzar gave orders that they clothed Daniel with purple and put a necklace around his neck. He issued a proclamation concerning him that he now had authority as the third ruler of the kingdom. But Daniel wanted none of that. So that same night, however, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was slain. And Darius the Mede received the kingdom at about the age 62. So this was the end of the Babylonian Empire. What we've got here is that Cyrus had surrounded the city. So the historian, you read Herodotus, he gives us the story about what happened with Babylon. The Medes and Persians had the city surrounded. So while he's in the city having this party, drinking from the vessels from the Jewish temple, his city is surrounded by Cyrus the king and Darius the Mede. And so they're there celebrating while they have a siege upon them on the outside. Now, Babylon was so big, their walls were so thick, they couldn't get through the walls. And they had enough land inside that they could grow their own food, so you're not going to starve them out. They had a river coming through the city, so they had water. So, you know, you're not going to starve them out. People in Babylon were up on the wall throwing food at the Medes and Persians, kind of taunting them, thinking that you're going to starve us out, you know. So this was the arrogance in his thinking. Now he's in there with his city surrounded by all these people, and he's having a party. So it just tells us where his mind is. You know, he probably wasn't worthy to be a king at all. He was a co-regent for about 10 years or so. Yeah, about 10 years we think it was. So that night they came in. And they came in how? I read it says they diverted the waters of the Euphrates. He dug 3 big channels, and they had that all blocked, and they had them blocked off. And then they pulled the blocks, the dams, and all the water that quickly filled those channels. And when it did, the river dropped in level inside Babylon, where guys could get in there and get under the gates and get up on the other side. And when they got there in the middle, the side gates had been left unlocked. And everybody's celebrating, so they were able to hit the street and go to the main gate and open the door. And so, at Babylon's greatest strength, at the peak of their great strength, the city fell without a fight. You know?
You know how they dried up the river?
Yeah.
I looked at the siege. They were trying to start them out, well, you can't.
Right, yeah.
They gotta have the river for the.
Right. And they did it.
Occurred to them to do that.
Yeah.
After they dried up.
Yeah. They well, that's that Babylon is fallen. The Revelation 14:8 is a pickup out of the Old Testament, which gives a song of the fall of Babylon at this night, where they see the chariots coming and everything, and give out the warning sound: Babylon has fallen, using the double have fallen, the emphatic, in order to really push home the fact of the demise of Babylon. And so, yeah, this is where we get that whole thing from. And in Revelation, though, the falling of Babylon, which is about the spiritual Babylon, the counter city to heavenly Jerusalem, is Satan's kingdom that falls. And it falls because God's kingdom, the New Jerusalem, is triumphant. It comes in and displaces it, and it's eclipsed. God is taking back the world. Remember, at some point, God has to take the world back. That's what he's done in Revelation 14. He's taken the world back. He's telling Satan, you're no longer king of the air. You don't have any rights here anymore. I'm taking it back. And so they're using these backstories in the Old Testament as the picture to kind of tell that future story. You know, it's not a literal Babylon in the future. He's using the name Babylon in a spiritual context. And so, but we see the river, the story of the river being lowered, being dried up, so to speak, in 7 last plagues. They're in chapter 16, verse 12, where the bowl is poured out upon the river Euphrates, and it dries up, preparing the way for the kings of the east. Well, not yet. That's in 19. 19 and 20, you know. But this drying up of the Euphrates, like here, was bad news for Belshazzar, but it was good news for the Jews. Because as soon as Cyrus came in, he set them free. He sent them back and not just the Jews, but anybody. He sent them back to do that. And Darius, some years later, he even made arrangements for them to get what they needed out of Lebanon, the trees, the wood, and everything for it. And when the Samaritans gave him a hard time, he told the Samaritans, no, they're going to rebuild it. You're going to help pay for it. So he made him give money over for that. So Nehemiah and
Carl?
Ezra was in charge of it. Nehemiah came in later, was later made governor of the area. Now this is 100 years later from this night. It's almost 100 years later. And just let you know, this wasn't happening that stuff didn't happen overnight. Okay, question?
Carl?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Um, and looking a little bit further down the chapter, when Daniel comes in, he tells, what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. And then he says, you've not humbled yourself. So it does point out that Belshazzar did have an opportunity to make better choices.
Yeah. And he knew, and Daniel tells him, you knew the story. You knew this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So he grew up with it. He was well aware of it. This wasn't so brand new to him, like he never heard it before. He
Right.
just disregarded it. It wasn't to him. It was the old people. That was their day, and I'm a new day. And this is the new day here today, and I'm not going to give myself over to that. And it cost him.
In my version here, it says, you have proudly defied the Lord of heaven.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Exactly.
horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the basic story of chapter 5 of the handwriting on the wall. And that's why, of course, where we got it from, people talk about when stuff was coming to an end, a conclusion. I can see the handwriting on the wall, that it's right out of this. But so we see here, we've had one chapter of the test on the Jews, the three faithful. We had 2 chapters now on the test of the kings. Now, I found it, if you just do an overlook of this, why would God test the kings? They're not his people. The Jews are his people. They're tested, but why test the kings? Yeah, well,
Well,
it's
he's still testing Gentiles today.
testing
I mean,
Gentiles
we're
then.
all his children, regardless.
Some people, when they, sometimes we have a little problem in understanding why Jerusalem or Israel came into existence. It wasn't because God liked them better. I saw one of the movies and stuff on that.
Well, he wanted, did God want Jews to be a peculiar people
Their whole purpose.
Yeah,
for the other tribes?
Isaiah speaks about the Israel being a light on the hill to the rest of the world. They were to be the example. But here, this is the case, and I think I've discussed it here with you guys before. Why there is Israel, why Israel came into existence. God wasn't looking for just his own people and then damned everybody else. We're in chapter 11 of the book of Genesis, and we see all the nations coming together to build the Tower of Babel, the Tower of the Gate of God, to make a name for themselves, not to glorify God, but to glorify themselves. And so they're falling right back into the old patterns that he had just come out of with the flood. It's not any better. And so what God needed to do was find a way to find a nation to put his name back into the world, not their names. And so at the end of chapter 11, we're introduced to a man named Abram. This is the first time we see Abram coming in. And this is where God is going to use this man to build his own nation. And we'll shut the door here in a second. We had a problem with that last week too. Okay. All right. So, well, here's a little better. But here's the deal. Now God has his own people who he is bringing up now to be that light to the world. But he isn't just stopping at that. His ultimate plan is not just to bring in Israel, but to bring in the Goyim as well. Bring the whole world in together. That was his plan. But he needed a nation in order to establish his name in the world and to get it out there. Yeah. Now, I've heard rabbis talk about being Jewish, and they don't have a sense of evangelism about themselves. They don't have a feeling that they're to give a message to the rest of the world. It's all in-house. And I do my religion, and you can do your religion, and that's fine. And they don't see how they fit in to the proclamation to the rest of the world to bring the message of God's unification. So God was certainly interested in these kings, not just Jews, but the Goyim as well. And that's why they were tested. God was bringing his message to all the people. That's some of the reason why I said Daniel wrote some of his books there in Aramaic, so everybody in town could read them, Jew or Gentile. They could read the message. The message was for them as well. You know. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, and we see it parts along through the Old Testament where God is reaching out to a wider audience, not just the Jews. Book of Amos, chapter 9. It speaks about the mixed multitudes that follow them back. Very important, mixed multitudes. So the mixed multitudes are the ones who hear the message. The God-fearers of the second temple period, time of Jesus. Cornelius. Peter goes to Cornelius' house. He's a Roman soldier, centurion. He's a God-fearer. And so he goes to give him the message.
Yeah. Karl?
Yeah. Someone speaking here. Hold on. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the central area.
Can I? Yeah.
Go ahead, Martha.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking that, when the Jews were responsible for the death of Christ, that basically ended their responsibility for being his messengers, and the Christian church came into existence, which we know as spiritual Israel, which now, the responsibility has come upon Christians to share the truth of God.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's come upon the church now to do the same thing. But we
Mhm.
have a message. The Jews had a message to be the light of the world, to point them to Jehovah, the Creator, and everything. And we, as followers of Christ, have been given this commission to share what we have been taught, the message of Christ.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yes, city of. It's a Yaru Shalom. It's a city of peace. Of course, we know it's not a peaceful city. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, we'll be done here shortly, I think. So, any big other insightful questions you have about chapter 5 of the book of Daniel?
Karl, I
Yes.
was just thinking that I don't know, what the connection here is, but just as the Medes and the Persians came in surreptitiously and conquered Babylon, isn't it interesting that back in 89, that communism fell without a fight pretty much? And it was almost like God was allowing for the message of Christianity and the message of Christ to go to the whole world that had been kept from
Yeah, when
religious
the
freedom.
USSR fell, that really opened the doors for evangelism of Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
I know Carter was there, and we sent a lot of our evangelists to Russia. And we have a big church now in Russia that we didn't have
Just-
before. You know, even with Putin now, Putin is with his communistic ways, he shows um, obedience to the church, to the mosque, to the Russian Orthodox Church. So he's not ignoring it. He's not. He's actually part and parcel of it. So, and that was, of course, to be a communist was to be an atheist. And that's why the churches were closed in Russia, or I should say USSR. So, I mean, they weren't ever fully closed, but they were closed. You know. And that was for ever since the revolution. The revolution was what, 1918, 1917, right around there. Bolshevik revolution. So all the way up to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the downsizing of USSR. Okay. Um, no other questions
I,
or
I,
answers?
could I just say,
I had a question. I know last week you said Daniel 5 is related to Revelation 16, I think you said. And
Yeah.
I was just wondering how
Well,
Revelation 16 and Daniel 5 are related.
I just related a little bit ago about how in Revelation chapter 16, in the seven last plagues, the bowl plagues, in verse 12, the sixth plague was poured out on the river Euphrates, and had dried up the river, preparing the way for the kings of the east. And that's just what Cyrus did when he dried up the river Euphrates, or lowered the water level so he could get in under the gate and capture the city. So that river was lowered for the kings of the east, Cyrus and Darius, or Darius. Whereas in the Bible, they're using that story as a template to tell about the ultimate, where God will dry up the river Euphrates, which in New Testament Revelation is a symbol for the enemies of God's people. And that preparing for the kings of the east is the king of Jesus Christ and his army, who will come and set them free. So the drying up of Euphrates, either way, in the real Babylon back in 539, or in the end time in Revelation 16, when the Euphrates River is dried up, that's good news for God's people. It means our deliverance is near. All right?
yeah,
You got
that's a neat
Yes,
connection.
yes. Thank you.
okay? All right. So with that, I mean we still got a few minutes if there's any more questions. He's coming back with that vacuum cleaner again.
Karl, I was reading in Jacques Ducan's book on Daniel this week and this chapter, and I came across just a sentence here that really, one who is capable of seeing beyond their own self can be saved. Salvation is from without, not from within. And that was the problem with the kings of Babylon, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're having a hard time with that vacuum cleaner out there. We
Yeah.
didn't have time. We didn't have a real problem with that during Revelation. We didn't really have a hard time with the vacuum cleaner here, except for the last two meetings, last week and this week.
Yeah.
Huh. Maybe Satan doesn't want us to hear the message of the king of Belshazzar and handwriting on the wall. So
I'll tell you. Okay, did it stop?
it just
I think that was me, guys. Sorry about that.
so what, you were vacuuming?
Oh no, my music started playing on my computer.
Oh, no, we didn't hear that. The vacuum sound alert. Yeah, got that out.
Okay. Well, they did that last week too.
Yeah. Yes, they did. So, okay, I guess if we're done with questions and everything, you think you got all this. Next week is Daniel and the Lions Den. We're going to finish up the narratives and then get into the second half of the book. So I got a lot of work to do this week to get stuff ready to send out to you. I want to send out the rest of the book to you before the next meeting we have. So you have some time to kind of look at it and get prepared for some of the stuff we're going to do.
Okay, that's good.
Especially chapter 7. I got a lot of pages for chapter 7. There's not just 3 or 4 pages like a lesson. Chapter 7's got a bunch of stuff. This is the heart. Chapter 7, 8, and 9 is the heart of the Adventist movement. And there's a lot of controversial stuff in there. And we're going to deal with some of that controversy. So, I mean, I got my form of heresy, and so we're going to see what kind of trouble I can cause. And yeah. I was just talking about that to the vice president of the conference. Says, yeah, I can't wait till I get into chapter 7. I'm going to get this fellowship. He laughed. But yeah, our conference vice president used to be an associate pastor here at the Glendale Church back in the early 2000s. So, yeah. Remember when Ray came and everything, he and his family? And that's when Donald Smith left. His dad got hit by a car and he moved out to California and started preaching out there. The pastor of the Eagle Rock Church, and then moved over to Alhambra. Okay, with that said, if we're done, no more questions, we'll go ahead and have prayer and end it.
All right.
Pastor Smith? Oh, his father had been retired for years. Smith. He was retired and he was out jogging. Car came, a little pickup truck hit him. He died in the
Were you
hospital.
talking about Pastor Don Smith?
Yeah.
Oh
Don
gosh,
Smith's father.
he was Pastor Don Smith was my pastor for 10 years at Alhambra.
Yeah. He had me come out to Alhambra a few years back to do some stuff on Ellen White during the Sabbath School period. And back before that, when he was at Eagle Rock, I came out and did a weekend series on some Adventist history there at the Eagle Rock Church there in Glendale. And so I haven't been out there in a long time to see Don.
I hear he's at the White Memorial Church now as associate pastor.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Okay.
That's what I hear. I don't know, how reliable my source was.
You was a pastor there in Alhambra for 10 years, huh? When you were there?
Pardon me?
You were there 10 years at the Alhambra Church?
At Alhambra, yeah.
It's an interesting neighborhood with churches. It's all Chinese.
Yeah, it's a predominantly Asian neighborhood, Alhambra.
Yeah, right. Okay, I think we're about
And I
ready.
used to belong to the
We got another vacuum cleaner going again.
okay.
So I think we'll go ahead and have
All
prayer.
right.
Let you guys get going here. Okay? Okay, we're going to have prayer, guys. Prayer. We're going to have prayer and close it up. All right. Sorry for all the commotion, guys. I wish we didn't have all that, but, Dear Father, thank you that we can be together and discuss these very important things out of the book of Daniel. We pray that you bless us with that. Bless us as we prepare for the last lesson in the narratives there, Daniel in the lion's den, and prepare our hearts with that information to move into the prophecies. Thank you for the blessing for us. Help us to internalize what this message is, to share with others, that we can be a blessing to them. Be with us now is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay?
All right, thanks, Uncle Karl.
Amen.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right. See you next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to
Bye.
wrap.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Where exactly is it that you meet?
I'm sorry?
Where is it that you meet? Which church?
We meet at the Glendale Seventh-day Adventist Church at 6801 North 43rd Avenue in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
So
I'm
we're
going to
right
try
on
to
the
make
corner
it
of
down
Glendale,
there at least.
right by the corner of Glendale and 43rd Avenue.
Okay, I'm going to try to make it down there at least once before I leave for the winter.
Okay. Yeah, you're more than welcome. Yeah.
an experienced person.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh,
Okay,
here
thank
we
you.
go. All right.